Okay, hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our very first session of Europe Voices of Women in Film, which would usually take place now in Sydney. My name is Sonja Heinen. I'm the Managing Director of EFP, that's European Film Promotion, and we are actually an international network organization of all the national film promotion institutes from throughout Europe. So 37 countries participate in EFP. They send us the best of their talent and their films, and we go out into the world to promote it internationally. So here with us are 9 of the 10 women who have made a film which was selected for our program at Sydney. I would like to thank you all for participating in the session and for talking with us about your films. I would like to thank the Sydney Film Festival for the partnership with us, which we are doing since 2016, with great women directors presenting absolutely exciting films. And I would like to thank Creative Europe, the media program, without who we couldn't do that program at all. And of course, also Urimash, who is our longstanding partner in this. And since last year, we are partnering with the EVA network, European Women's Audiovisual Network, and which is a wonderful collaboration. And I would like to introduce to you Tamara Tatishvili, who's doing the strategics for the network. And Tamara will take over the session. And with us, before I give over to you, Tamara, I would like to introduce Andreas Struck. Andreas is the project director from EFP for Sydney, and Jo Milberger, who is also with us, is our deputy managing director. And I leave Tamara with the moderation and to introduce the films and the wonderful directors behind.
Thank you very much, Sonja, and hello, everyone. As said, my name is Tamara. I represent European Women's Audiovisual Network, and it is a total pleasure to be in this partnership with the organizations that have been already mentioned. So I will not repeat what Sonja has said, but for the second year, we do feel very lucky that we can have these joint events with EFP, collaborate with Sonja, Jo, and Andreas, whom we know is brilliant on organizing this project, and we would be very happy to keep in touch with you and tell you a bit more about EWA. So let me maybe give you a short overview of what is the idea today. As a representative of EWA Network, you obviously all understand that it's European Women's Audiovisual Network, which means that it supports empowerment of female talent. EWA Network exists since year 2013 and acts in different directions in order to support its membership. As a membership organization, it acts in direction of advocacy for gender equality, but it is also a much more practical organization and offers the activities that are specific for different kind of talent. So one of the flagship activities is Producers Mentoring Program, for instance, that runs over 1 year and helps young producers to be mentored by those that are already successful in their job on European stage. There is also a residency for writers. There are a lot of advocacy works in Brussels, but also internationally in order to boost the gender representation. And we are quite strongly present in virtual reality. Way before COVID outbreak, we had a lot of online events because not everyone can have an access to different labs, festivals, because we do know that those travels cost and not everyone is always selected to be part of the exclusive groups. So there's a lot of activities for members online that is about accelerating talent, getting access to financing, so on and so forth. Why this event is so interesting for us and why for me personally, I do love doing it, because I think something that is very important is to look at things from a perspective that you don't necessarily embark on by your original feeling or by the reality in which you are rooted. And I think probably this is what the team of EFP, but also other partners and the festival itself wanted to discuss when we've been coming up with this idea of how to navigate the cultural boundaries and tell your own stories. Now, I'm very far away from the thought that all of you have one thematic understanding of cultural boundaries and how you navigate your own ambition, your own artistic vision. But after reading a bit about some of you, knowing some of you before and watching the films, I did feel that it's just so wonderful that there is such a pool of talent, like literally an army of female talent that is helping the process of putting in practice what gender equality agenda really means. Because sometimes you end up in an event and you only talk about statistics. And don't misunderstand me, I don't say that 50-50 doesn't matter, it does matter a lot. But what matters probably even more is like shifting the narrative, is to trying to look at things from a different perspective, but also understanding and respecting where is the culture that this story is coming from and how are we looking at things. Are we victimizing? Are we maybe falling into some stereotypes or bias without knowing, or sometimes even knowing, because it's way easier that way because we're used to it. And these films, with its power, sometimes with its immense strength, sometimes in a more tender way, they do help us understand how to shift sometimes our own thinking, how to shift the narrative, and how to be daring even as an audience. So I would just like to thank you all for being so great in doing what you're doing, because finally I'm a human being like all of us. And at some point last year, I just hated sitting in front of my computer and attending online premieres or having a pleasure of, moderating a premiere or inviting talent to a Q&A. At some point I thought, why am I still doing it? Why am I opening this computer and one day I'm in one country and another in another country? And I understood that it's only the stories that move, that attract, that still somehow affect us very powerfully. And these stories elicit deep feelings and they help us to navigate a little bit in our own lives. And I think that in one way or another, some people will love them, others will criticize it. That's why cinema exists. But you have all really helped me make those hours so meaningful. And I'm super happy that at least virtually, I'm gonna meet you almost all 9 out of 10 filmmakers today. And then at some point, I'm sure that in this crazy industry that we are operating in, we will also probably at some point cheer in person in a festival in coming years. So let's see how each of you look at the cultural boundaries, how much you need to push them in order to say what you want to say in your visual narrative, and how easy it is, and if not, how you're overcoming the challenges. And I would like to go to a country that I'm spying a bit behind for some years, and I'm looking here at Blerta, who has done the film Hive. I assume that some of you maybe have seen the films selected in the programs, others not. But Blerta is coming from Kosovo, right, Blerta? And you are in Kosovo right now, I assume. And what's happening in that country in terms of pushing the boundaries and having this powerhouse female talent that each of them have a film in A-list festival. And not only that, whatever comes out of Kosovo mostly is like really shaking the industry in one way or another. And let me tell you, with my background in film policies and to some sort of international cooperation, I do know that there's a lot to be done, and it's not easy to promote and to put a spotlight on low production capacity countries, as we say. But I was very impressed, Blerta, by your work in the film Hive, of which you will tell us a bit probably, and maybe also mention which countries have co-produced it. Because to me, in short, and I'm not here to tell the stories because people will watch the films, it's a detailed account of female empowerment. Unfortunately, it's a film that is based on true events. It comes out of the war history that your country and the region has, but it has so much power, and you are telling us the story of your main hero, who's female, and who is finally very successful as a businesswoman, as a mother, and as an individual person who broke out of the stereotypes in one way or another. So could you tell us a bit about the process of identifying this story and how challenging it was to actually bring it to the screen?
Yeah, thank you. Well, you know, in terms of like women filmmakers and the industry and the films that are happening here, it is partially because the Cinematography Center decided to open the doors to younger filmmakers, because it used to be only older filmmakers who had a chance to do films. And then at some point they decided that we need to hear younger voices. I'm not so young anymore, but at least it happened. I'm a little bit younger than those who used to make films. And luckily, I mean, we do have a lot of women filmmakers, and I can say that almost each of them made wonderful films. So in terms of being a woman filmmaker, I didn't have to push much boundaries because they were pushed by my colleagues. And in a way, I do see the success of all the films of a sacrifice, a little bit of all the artists, and love and passion and enthusiasm, because although it's a country with I can say like maybe low budget films, it's like ultra low budget films that are produced here, but then with the hard work of every filmmaker, there are films being made. And as you said, almost every film is going to an A-list film festival. Only this year we've been in many festivals, starting from Sundance to Rotterdam, and now we'll have in Venice, Locarno, Cannes, everywhere. So it's a little bit like we're a little bit surprised with all the results, but we shouldn't be, because it's been at least in the last 10 years, a lot of beautiful films have been made. And a little bit, I think it happened because once a filmmaker, which is a woman again, like Virta Zeciri, went to Sundance with a short film, then it kind of, I think it kind of brought the belief that even coming from a small country like Kosovo and making these very low budget films, you can still make it and have your film shown to bigger audiences, and have the film have a bigger journey than only showing it in Kosovo. So I think of film after film, and kind of seeing your colleagues work so passionately, it was kind of a way of inspiring each other and working with each other that made all these films successful.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I think all my EFP colleagues will agree that Arben is doing a great job at the Kosovo Film Center. And it's great that he is opening up to a younger generation. But what is paradoxical, and I do think that you are still pushing the boundary quite well, is that on one hand, you're telling the story how your industry is mobilizing, which is great. And on the other hand, in your film, we do see that the Feria, right, your main actress actually really needs to push a strong mile in order to get an access to the decision to ride a car and to make her own small business in order to feed her family, literally, but in a way just to become a strong individual, whatever gender, just to be able to take care of herself and her loved ones. And then she's also pushing all the others behind herself, right? The others that do not want to cross the line because they will be criticized. So in one way or another, I do believe that there is this layer of complexity still, and it's great that you are telling those stories and bringing them to international audiences.
I mean, yes, definitely. I mean, it is quite, I mean, life is paradoxical in many ways. And I think some things do move on faster than others. And then it becomes this balance of having so many let's say, so many women in filmmaking who and what made it like it's very normal in Kosovo to be a woman filmmaker, at least as long as we have low budget films. A colleague of mine was like, let's wait and see when we have big budget films, if there are going to be a lot of women, or they're still going to try and trust that money to men directors, but we're not going to be so quiet if that happens. But at the same time, yes, it's a patriarchal society. And for me, I was born and raised in Pristina, and I lived only for a couple of years in New York, but then I came back here. So I spent all my life here. And even for me, it was a little bit surprising, although we do face patriarchy even in my everyday life. But at the same time, I think I'm in a better position. So for me, it felt like I do like saying the truth, and I do like being honest of things happening around me. Although sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes I wasn't aware that they're to that level. So even for me, hearing Fahriye's story was a little bit, but yes, we are known for for good hospitality. We really like people coming to our country. We are really known for solidarity because we did help each other when the war happened or before the war. I mean, whoever went to West to work, they would send money back to Kosovo. So we were kind of known for supporting each other. And then when this woman wants to get a driving license and work, my answer would be, what would the rest do? Would be that the whole village would just help her. I mean, that would be my answer coming from here. And then we do see people prejudicing her, and film has to be, as long as it has to be, you have to focus the story, but many more things happen to her. And I think I could make many more films about Fahriye. But just meeting, I mean, for me, I heard the story, I was surprised, I was sad that she had to go through that also, besides losing her husband and having to look for him. Even today, she hasn't found her husband, and she still had to deal with society. And as you said, even if it came from men, but also a little bit from women, because some of them did not want to join her, and some of them also were against her, in one way or another. So, I mean, she had to make this all happen, and carrying her pain within herself, and having to take care of two children. I do have 2 children, and I think even today it's very hard to raise them. And I could imagine, or I can try to imagine, how has it been for her dealing with all that pain and all prejudice. But in a way, if you ever have a chance to meet Fahriye or see a video of her talking, then you know that she could do it, because she's just such an inspiring character, and really, she inspired me, and I learned so much from her.
Inspiring, as you said, but not to give away too much of the spoiler, and to let people and the audience watch the films. I think it's really something that sometimes people don't understand on a paper when you advocate for a cause, but when you see the film and the transformation of your character, then you understand how important this agenda is, and that it's really is changing lives with culture, within a cultural, traditional context and beyond. So I wish you wonderful continuation of exploring the different angles to her character, and many others I'm sure you have. And let me now move maybe not too far away. I'm looking at you, Maria, because the documentary film called Reconciliation is a co-production between Slovenia, Serbia, Montenegro, and Kosovo, right? And here in that film, we are somehow traveling to contemporary Albania, right? And then we are looking at something that is, shortly speaking, a tradition of taking the blood. To me, I come from Georgia, the country, as you probably all understood, and not the US. And the things that I'm seeing in this work, I do understand them fairly easily. I see the context. I know this kind of tradition, and then also the societal and the pain of a societal change happening also in Caucasian context, not only in the context which you're showing. But I sometimes still have a feeling if this kind of realities, if international audiences are ready, if they are interested to watch that, is that something that is appealing or not? And I know that it might be a bit of a challenging alley to take, but tell us, Maria, how did you end up doing this, you know, this documentary chronicle, and why you went to that country, because you're not from there, right?
Yeah, firstly, hello. I'm actually not far away. I'm in Prizren, Kosovo right now, where we are premiering we have a Kosovo premiere of our documentary within the DocuFest Film Festival, a very familiar festival in the region. I am not sure if I can answer the question about the interests of the industry or the audiences. That's up to the audiences to decide. As to the topic of the film, I think it's, to me, it was a complex topic because it is set in modern day. It's very easy to oversimplify this issue, as in saying that, you know, there is an old tradition that's persisting to the present day. But that's not the case. Albania had a very complex history. It was under communism for 50 years, during which old traditions along with religion were suppressed. And during the 90s, when one system fell and the new democratic system was not trusted yet, that's when some revival of the past started to happen. And in some cases, it was just misinterpreted, abused even. As you can see, there's a protagonist in the film that I think maneuvers between different value systems, religion on the one hand, and some kind of an attempt of a revival of the past, of the old traditions on the other. So I saw this as something that did not seem as something that's very far away from me. This kind of revival of tradition, misinterpreted again, of old values, I would say, is something that was going on in Europe as I started to make this film. In our case, by the, I would say, populist far-right movements that started to bring forth, you know, going back into our national pasts or relying onto our national religions, or trying to revive these patriarchal modes of living that are said to exist once. And I actually saw a lot of parallels between that situation and the situation of Albania in the 90s when this started to happen. So if you have a lot of large numbers of disenfranchised people who are looking for solutions for very modern problems, then you can start to sell them these, I would say, old solutions for modern problems. Not that that's how it happened. That's not exactly how it happened in Albania. In mid-90s, the country was at a brink of almost a civil war due to the collapse of a large number of pyramid schemes. So you can see this setting, you know, of kind of lawlessness in a way, where you can start filling in this void with various value systems, none of which function properly. And I saw something similar happening. I have a background in sociology. Maybe that's why I also try to see things from a bigger picture before I enter into a personal story, which this film is. It's a very, very personal story about loss, forgiveness, and how can you let go of something from the past. And that's something as a topic that appealed to me. And of course, filmmakers like Blerta from Kosovo and a large number of young filmmakers from Kosovo, and I'm sure Albanian filmmakers will join them as well, are dealing with some similar topics and some very own treatments, because this particular topic might be, I wouldn't say exotic, but not necessarily incredibly familiar even to some Albanians. I was filming in very, very remote areas, and I wanted to show this topic on a personal level, but also more complex as it used to be treated. So, yeah.
And you've mentioned your background, and if I just may add, which personal note, somehow I think when other people will see your films, you can see with this title that you're very passionate to tell these social stories, but there is also a very delicate account, you know, of facts and tradition. And I would like to congratulate you on that, because that's not an easy thing to achieve, and even more so in historic context, which is so complex. So
if I might just add a short note, when you talked about limitations, I would just like to point out something that I think started to happen to women filmmakers. And it's this notion that a female perspective is just a perspective that focuses on female characters. And while I do think that that is incredibly important to bring a larger variety and complex women female characters into focus, it's something that's also can be incredibly limiting for women filmmakers, just as we started to enter filmmaking in greater numbers. And that's some feedback that we got as we started launching it into the industry, into the market, from market professionals that, you know, while women filmmakers and female perspective is on trend right now, this may not be it, because it focuses too much on male characters. And also the second thing I would like to pick up on Blerta too, which is the budgets, and these are very important. We all know that from the statistics, European women filmmakers have been joining documentary filmmaking in larger numbers than feature films, where we all know that, first of all, a filmmaker has to wear many hats, and second of all, the budgets are much lower. So that's maybe something to consider.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for being so specific on that, because I'm trying to keep the focus on the films and on this program. And I thought, commenting on the issue of access to finance and the budgets that both of you have voiced later on, because we risk opening up the gender agenda in this conversation, because you are all opinionative and knowledgeable, and I would very much like to invite you to do that, maybe in another actions that our network does. But absolutely, getting access to the big budgets is one of the pillars. And it's me personally, with my whole career, if I've ever done something in this industry, and also many of my colleagues working across the equality agenda, having a female perspective is not like eliminating a group of women that need to tell stories to each other and be happy with that. I'm sure that now in a couple of minutes, there will be people taking up the floor and talking about the films they've done, how they've challenged also the perspective and the female gaze. And I'm actually looking at some of you, but on Zoom, you don't know whom. But it's about having equal access to everything, celebrating your talent with the equal financing that is available historically, mostly to male talent, and many other elements that are on content. It's about bias, it's about perspective, whose story we're telling, and so on. But as you've mentioned, European filmmakers, let's say, and probably more like Western European, where the structures are more stable and the continuation of funding is also a bit more elaborate. I'll move to France, and I would like to invite Charlène into the conversation. I think we are naturally evolving different angles that exists that female talent reflects on in their works. And in your film that is titled Slalom, right, which was also the Cannes labeled selection 2020. In brief, for me, this is a film that is such a powerful story of resilience of a child, and it's also emancipation, it's coming of age, it's set in this rather harsh you know, power playing reality of the high performance sports, and you have this never ending, and probably we will never find a black and white solution of relationship between the trainer and the talent, and what happens with the affection, with abuse, with passion. And what struck me quite strongly, Shalan, is that you are really bringing up the complexity of these matters. It's not only about the sexual abuse, and it's not like, you know, the account of the report, but it's you're showing how complicated that setup is. And I assume you know that setup pretty well, because you yourself been doing some of that in your previous life, right? Before you came to cinema. So could you tell us a bit more about your film, and why did you decide to tell that story of your young character? And was it pushed by any movement that we recently know, for instance, being it Me Too or anything else that followed, or did you work around the subject matter way before?
Yeah, that's a big question and a big subject, but no, actually it was not an answer of a movement to make this film, because I started the writing in 2014, so it took me 5 years to make this film and to finance the film, and because nobody wanted to hear about that before Me Too, and probably it happens because Me Too unlocked something and helped me to make it happen. But it was really a need from my inner needs to make this film. It was really important for me to become a free woman, to free myself from the story. It was quite a process, quite inconscient.
Unconscious, yeah.
Unconscious. I didn't really realize what I was writing while I was writing the script, actually. I had some really big ideas of the mountain where I grew up, the sport, probably the abuse, but that was really under the skin of all the rest of the elements of the film. So it took me a long time as well to reveal the point of the film. Yes, of course, it was really important for me to point the complexity of the situation, because I realized that we didn't talk about that before Me Too. There were no voice or really small voice. I realized that we didn't talk about that because it was complicated to talk about. That's why I make this film. I make this film to show the world that, yes, it can be complicated. Is it complicated? But we can explain what's happened by telling this story from the feelings of the character. So that was really my mission of this film, to focus on Lise, on to tell the story from her point of view, to performance. Like you enter in her body, in her mind, and you just follow her in this crazy adventure, sometimes good and sometimes bad as well. I wanted to show everything, so we can feel all the journey, with avoiding nothing of what she experiences in her journey there in the ski field with a trainer. So yeah.
That's, I think you've achieved a lot of what you're saying, and that's great. And as you said, the complexity, you need to approach it with peeling a layer a bit, probably one by one, because if you don't understand tiny little details for which you account very well in the film, then the complexity doesn't land on your screen or within your understanding straight away. So that's probably why this sort of stories and the perspectives need to exist to make us think differently and look at things differently, at least try to do it, because normally, as we all know, our mind tries to initially reject a drastic change in the perception. So that's very helpful. And from this angle, I think I would like to invite Eline, who is in Berlin right now, right? And who has done a fantastic film titled Nico. It's a German movie, and it is you'll tell us about the film, but what resonated with me a lot was the story of the nurse. That is such a wonderful character. I don't know how did you manage to have this burning energy and love for life on your screen, and then putting us, the audience, on the story of trauma and healing, and achieving all of it on screen. That's quite great. So congratulations on that. But there is one way complicated element to which some professionals think that gender agenda and cultural boundaries expanding. Others think that it's an independently existing issue, which is a diversity and inclusion. And I think that you resonate this in your film, and especially with this hate crime, which happens to your character, and then how she needs to overcome it and find her strengths and resilience and come back to society. And that happens through sports as well. So there are a lot of little lines. If you see your films in a package, they are very different, but there are some lines that give you like a beautiful little knitted painting. So tell us a bit about your film, maybe, Eline, and afterwards, I'm interested, how did you work with your producer, who is actually an actress as well? Is that so? So that's also quite an internal cultural cooperation that you achieved quite well. So how did this all happen? How did the story come together?
Hi everyone, thanks for participate here. There were a lot of questions now. I have to think, what do I answer first? So I start with Sarah Fasilat, that is a producer and the main actor. And we started in film school in the same year, and she came very quickly to me and said, hey Eline, I think maybe it's a match, let's do a film together. And I was very happy because I thought it too. So we started to always next to our projects. She had a few, I had a few. We started to film a little bit and develop slowly a script, without knowing that it will be our first feature after eight years later. And this is what Nico became, because after some years of developing, we thought, okay, it will be a big film, and it's too important for us to make this film than having a little project here next to our other projects. Yes, and this is what happened. The film is about a nurse, as you said, because my mom is a nurse. So she sometimes took me to her patients, and I had a lot in my memories how to direct it also in a way that it's not about being a nurse, more about what in this métier is characterizing a main character. And I think you can put so many characterizing aspects in just one scene, and you told everything about this person. So this was one pragmatic way, and also because I could work a lot with this métier, with all of my memories. And this nurse gets to a racist, how do you say in English, like an attack. And after this attack, she finds herself being faced with reality that maybe she was not a part of this country as she thought she is, of course. So, and because Sarah and I, for both of us, it was very important to not make a film about like the victim female person. The empowerment was the most important motivation to do this film. So we used sports, as you said. Maybe you help me out with another question, or
no, actually that's I've brought it in broad because you have a broad approach. You have within that duration of your film, we do see different issues such as hate crime and discrimination, as you mentioned, then belonging to the society. That's something, that's another lens, how you look at things. But the most importantly, which almost all of your films have in common, is the female empowerment. And I don't know if this has been one of the selecting criteria, or if it blends and is diffused so naturally in this selection, because in one way or another, I do understand that sometimes it's a very conscious and a strong decision, and sometimes it evolves with the script writing, as some of other colleagues said. All of these women, where women are on the front line of the stories, do change, get more empowered, get their life in their hands somehow. And there is one word you've mentioned, Aline, it was victimizing, and I think that's also a perspective that some of you here in this program are challenging very strongly. So really your film resonates also towards the diversity and inclusion agenda, because it's not only the story of the nurse, but it's also something that happens to many people next to us in the cities where we live. And that's something that our industry right now is starting to discuss very, very seriously, I believe. As time is ticking, I need to move to another filmmaker whose film is also Cannes label 2020, Ninja from Sweden. I could have probably an hours of Q&As with all of you, because I'm really enjoying it. But if Pleasure's been a film that was very much anticipated. I also know from, let's say, Swedish and Nordic context, if something is staying with me, is the power dynamics, is the gaze, and also putting the film is set, as you all know, obviously, in the porn industry. And the way Ninja makes us look at what happens in that industry I think is absolutely remarkable, because you can get into a trap literally in every scene, maybe in every second scene, and either stereotype or feel like victimizing. And the way you have achieved it, Ninja, is incredibly interesting. And I felt so alarmed, to be honest, watching it. It was like full of power. Obviously, the film is very direct. It's very, it is what it is. Like, you are within the industry and you see things sometimes the way you maybe don't want to. And that's great. So tell me, how was this film received locally, let's say? Because I would assume that there have been some different opinions probably. And from where does such a strong interest come to set the film in this subculture and sub-industry of porn?
So when you say locally, do you mean in Sweden or?
Yes.
Okay. It hasn't actually been released yet. It's going to premiere in like 3 weeks from now. So It's only been screened at or showed at Gothenburg Film Festival in January, like an online festival. So I'm still waiting for the audience reaction to it. Yeah, and your second question was, the reason, the interest. I think since I started making films, and even before that, I've always been very interested in the male gaze, or like how media images affects our identities, or especially like as a woman, how my identity is shaped by cultural images. And so then I became really interested early in the male gaze, and I wanted to question it. And then I think like placing the story in the porn industry is the best place to, if you really want to show the male gaze, but also make a point with like reversing it, because it's really the male gaze taken into its most extreme form.
But you've done the gender studies, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yes.
So you're looking on things where you're putting your, how is camera seeing things, and how you are actually making your characters take their decisions and being absolutely in hold of what the next action is. And I think that is also very much changing the perspective on things, if you would agree to that.
Yeah, I think the perspective has been the key word, that it's from the female perspective. So take the position of being the sexual object, like the woman in the porn film is the most sexualized object, or sexualized or objectified as you can be, and then making her the protagonist and making the audience be with her and see it from her perspective was the point. Because I think that's really interesting, and it's also really important when we talk about being women, because we live in a man's world, and then our identities are somehow shaped by men. So we are also seeing ourselves, we're so good at seeing ourselves from the eye, like from the outside, and we have this internalized male gaze, which I find that very interesting, that process of shifting, like who is actually looking at who, sorry, I forgot your second question.
No, it was just one question which you have answered well. And I was just thinking now out loud, when people talk about the female gaze and non-objectivizing women and putting them into the active role, I think there is a film, Pleasure, that is actually an example, like a contemporary example, what does that really mean? And it's not only for for a little club of people who want to advocate for a cause, but it's just a great film that really puts things in the perspective. So whether we like it or not, that's a different story, but it does exist and it's possible to be done. So congratulations again, Ninja, and good luck with the release. You obviously already had a strong festival circuit, and you probably know so much and got inspired with all those years of working, that I'm sure that there should be some other powerful stories boiling in your mind in one way or another. Is that so?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Very good. I would like to move to Greece. Or let's say, Angeliki, if I understand it well, you live between Germany and Greece. It's a country that is my forever favorite, probably, maybe because Georgians and Greek are same, chaotic and outspoken, and share many other flaws as well. But I know about some other films that you've done, and I think that's something that is very interesting. Before we go to the Green Sea, that is the title presented here in this program, I think something happens with the perspective when you start living in another country, or if you go from one country to another, and probably at some point you start to question, where do you really belong, or if there is any priority line. So I was wondering if this story of women suffering from amnesia, that is in Green Sea, and then having this wonderful setting that is so perfect of her cooking in this tavern where she has no memory, but she has this skill, she has this sense. It's quite wonderful, actually. And then all the rest that happens without accounting for the details, because audiences will watch it, how she finds herself and starts her life again. I wonder, does your own life somehow professional and the questions that come up in your professional past have influenced putting all that in the character of your film? Or maybe not. How did you come up with this idea?
Can you hear me? Yes. Yes. The story is okay. I will say why I wanted to make this film. All my previous films were very hard, I can say. Edward was a prison film almost. It was the portrayal of a killer. Yes. Donusa was incest. Nights Get Away, it was female gambling. Yeah. And all these films were very hard in a way, strong films, very hard. And there came a time where I wanted, when Greece was in financial crisis, I had the feeling, and because my previous films were mixed, always German, Greek, mixed stories, German actors, Greek actors, I wanted to make a film with hope and with light, let's say so. And this is the story is inspired by a book, by a novel of an acclaimed Greek writer. The title is To See the Sea. And I love the idea that a woman who has no memory can cook, and in that case is able to bring people together, and she joins the people together. She creates a bond. And all these people are lonely, and she's lonely, and all of us are lonely today because we are in our apartments and we are lonely, And this woman brings all these people together with her cooking art, but the film is not about cooking. It's much more than this. But I really had the need to make something with a light at the end of the tunnel. I was tired of my previous films that they were so hard and so, that's the reason. And anyway, I must say something. I have made different films, many films, yes, but I thought one says the directors make always the same film. They change the story, but they make the same film. And I thought I always have a woman or a man that comes somewhere in a foreign environment, and then I come to the point what you mentioned. I'm a foreign. I mean, I came from Greece. I studied in Germany, yes. And so I had, the first shock was the cultural shock, from the south to the Central Europe, yes. It was a cultural shock. And anyway, I mean, I found myself in a strange foreign environment. Always my stories is somebody who arrives somewhere, yes, and it's a catalyst for himself and for the environment. She or he appears. And I thought, after the trilogy I had, it's over. But no, it's not over. I mean, I just see that it's the same with Green Sea. A woman comes and is catalyst for this environment and for herself as well.
Angelica, that's great. And actually, I was thinking to ask you about this quite a radical difference to your previous films. And if we go a bit self-ironic, and I think we can, because this conversation is informal and it's about talent and cinema, there's so much talk about female talent not making genre movies and this criminal records and so on. And you've done all those, you've played a lot, let's say, with all sorts of the genre in your previous films. And now, as you explained well, we are in this more, let's say, a tender setup when things evolve in a different way. So you have also somehow challenged your own way of filming and identifying the stories that you wanted to tell. So I find it very interesting, and I think it's really great to see how different films of one singular talent can be. So that's.
Do you know something? At the same time, all these years, I shot at the same time a documentary on the streets of Athens, about stray dogs. And I did at the same time these two films. I mean, every film takes 7 years in order to be done. But I thought it is good to change and not to be cliche, many people, when you make one film, the second film, they expect that you make the next serious drama or very heavy film. And I thought, no, I want to change, and I want to make the film I have to need to do. Yeah. I mean, I don't care what other people expect from him. I think food, because all people in the whole world, there is a basic, because you talked about boundaries. I think all people have memories from their childhood, from the grandmother, from the mother, you from the Georgian kitchen, me from the Greek kitchen, and the French kitchen, the French, and all the people recall their memories from the past when they eat something traditional. And I think it is every audience can understand this film, but at the same time, I decided for something which was not very easy. It was the form of the film. I decided about less is more. And that is a new way that I work by this film. I mean, by the previous films, I was moving the camera, it was very, very pushy. And here I decided to work in another way. But okay, that's all what I wanted to say about the film.
Yes, I totally hear you. And one of the missions, I think, and I'm looking at my colleagues from European Film Promotion, is to actually attract audiences to the films and make them understand what to expect. And I think it's like real strong menu here that could cater for all sorts of taste lovers in cinema, let's say. And I would move to Madrid, or close near Madrid, at least within the film context. Isabel, it's a pleasure to meet you here on Zoom. And the film, The Last Days of Spring, that you present is a co-production between Netherlands, Spain. And it's something that, I don't know, it's a wonderful and very touching, and to some extent very painful story as well, of how we need to play with the word of boundaries is actually really pushing your own boundary of the family in this city that you tell us about in Spain, that they are forced to leave the house that they've even built themselves, right, with their own hands. And then with this whole deconstruction and reconstruction, and the feeling that's and the pain that is accompanying the process. So I think it's extremely interesting and very, very cinematic what you have done. So congratulations on that. And maybe tell me something. I've made a bit of a research on all of you, of course, in one way or another, out of curiosity. And in one of your in one of your versions of the cinematic interest, there is this line that you are finding cinema of in-Betweenness, which is combining reality and fiction. And I think that this film very much echoes what you're trying to say also in that sentence. So tell your colleagues and tell us about the film, and whether there is an reality element to that story or not. Is it something that has happened or happening or could happen? I let you explain the rest.
Yes, thank you for inviting me here. Well, actually, what we did with this film was for me very new and interesting as well, because we normally in film you recreate the past, something that has happened, you recreate. But what we did with this film is we recreated the future. So this family and this place where the family lives in a slum near Madrid, it's real. They lived there their whole lives for 18 years. I've met the family 5 years prior to making this film, because I made a short with 2 of the youngest brothers of the family. And we always stayed in touch. I'm half Spanish, so that's also, I think, an interesting side note when we're talking about this notion of bridging between 2 cultures. I visit Spain every year to see my family. And I made I ended up, after visiting my family, also visiting this family. And at one of those visits, they told me the land they were living on, it was illegal land, it was been sold and they were going to be evicted. For me, this was a very strong notion, and from that point on, knowing they were going to lose their not only their home, but their own way of life, because they are Gitanos in Spain, which is this whole different culture within a culture. It's not only losing a home, but it's being forced to be integrated into what we call normal society. So I wanted to document this process. But then again, I was living in a different country, and this process was really not to be orchestrated. They didn't know, they knew they were going to leave their house. We knew they were going to have, within 1 or 2 years, a letter sent to their home. And then in the letter, they were sent an address, a key, and 2 days later, they would have to move their house. So something that was very difficult for us to control, living in a different country, of course, as well. But even living in Spain, it's very difficult to be there. So we were forced to think about a way, how can we still tell this story without waiting for it, of course, as well. And then also some important moments of the film. For example, they have this town meeting where these Red Cross volunteers explain to them, you will have to leave. The land has been sold. Those meetings happened in the past, so we had to recreate those. And then on the other hand, also be a little bit, how do you say? Represent the future, like recreate the future, what we knew, how it could happen. So that's how we did it.
Isabel, sorry to interrupt you, but tell me if I'm wrong. So what you're essentially saying is that you, as a director, you like to work with non-professionals, right? So these are the people that, because that's quite explicitly written around your professional actions and biographies. So you actually, in that film, we see what people would project they would feel in the future with this. Yeah, that's I think is really a very interesting.
It was really, sometimes time was going faster than we could film it, and sometimes it was the other way. So actually, when we filmed the last scene that they are actually leaving their house, it was also very strange for them, because we emptied their house. We took everything, and then after shooting the film, we put everything back. But then 2 months later, only 2 months later, they actually got the letter and they had to leave. And I've been asked many times, wasn't this traumatic for them to having to almost relive this twice? And I talked with them, of course, about this process. But the interesting thing is that they said that for them, it was a way to rethink this process. And instead of being it only a negative, thinking about it in a negative way, they almost, by acting it, took control of the situation. So they were prepared. So that was,
nice. I wanted just very quickly say that maybe it was even some kind of therapeutic process for them, in a way, to know what they've been going through. And this kind of practice does exist even in psychology in a different context. So it really is very interesting. And I hope that we will have another chance, Isabel, on other festival world, let's say, to discuss a bit more about that. Evie, we've started talking because we were the first two connecting to this link, and it was very clear for me that the director of a film called Why Not You, co-production between Austria and Belgium, right, is it's full of energy, and there's something very strong and very honest about you that you connect immediately. So that's great that I had the chance to chat with you a little bit. I think what's very interesting about this film when the festival audiences will see it is also to look how you are entering this world of two young men, let's say, at least the main the main character who is male, and the story echoes to let's say LGBTQI plus issues, the gay thematic, but also to some extent the religious transformation and what happens to a person that is not allowed to the society where he maybe thinks he belongs, and how then the person can be individually affected and where does it live. So it's really up to you to tell us what is the story of Why Not You, and why did you decide to make it?
Well, actually, Why Not You is only the international sales title. The original title is Hochwald.
Okay.
That's a place. In English, it would be High Forest. But it's a village it's a fictional village I created. And the most important background, or let's say one of the main characters, is Hochwald, is High Forest. And well, in this Hochwald, there lived these two young boys. One left already to have a career as an actor. The other wanted to go soon away to be a dancer. But as they are coming from different social backgrounds, they have different cards in their hand for how to go on in their lives. And well, actually, the winner, who went away as an actor, at the end becomes, it's a tragedy, ends his life. It's they got caught in a Islamic attack in a gay bar. But I want to say something about what you said before about gay issues and this and that. I didn't think a second about doing a movie, a political correct movie about gays or Islam or religion or whatever. I just wanted to tell a story about a lost boy, about a boy who is not able to start a career, is not does not even know if he's talented enough, does not have the money to go away from this little village, from this community. And this main character brought me to a modern story of our lives today. Yeah? That's a natural way to die nowadays in an attack. Yeah? If the movie is in the 70s, what I was thinking also to do to get out of this this Islamic topic, it would be I don't know, an attack of Brigate Rosse, the how it's called, Red Brigade. I'm sorry, the terrorists of the 70s in Italy. And well, the thing is that I think I'm not so happy about that now the movie is so much in this LGBTQ context, because I think sexuality in this movie is fluent, like it is nowadays, like it is. When I speak to young people, they don't think so much about all this I don't know, all these borders we discuss all day long. I think we should go on, and it's a modern Heimatfilm. I don't know if you have this, it's an international genre, but I think there are only Austrian movies done. It's a film about homeland and of our modern homeland, especially my homeland, South Germany.
That's so interesting, Abby, what you're saying, because I completely understand that when you say, it's a story of course it is a story of a boy, and it's set in the context which and it evolves naturally, and all these elements, be it LGBTQI or the attack, as you mentioned, they are actually the current trends that we all live in our lives, right? So that's sad, actually, because that's how our life is, that comes in the film naturally, because this is still what we are going through. That we can go in a club, be it a gay club or not, is not essential. I completely hear you there. But then we can be attacked by someone with some sort of a fundamentalistic views on things, and the lives of young or old people are taken, and that's obviously charges, I think, your film with the sense of some sort of a sense of urgency also on the societal level of what happens. We follow the story of the lost boy, as you said very warmly, who has this passion for dancing, and he dances inside of him all the time, right? But still there are so many barriers that he needs to overcome, because these cards that you said in his hands and in the hand of his friend, who comes from different family, right, is much more on more empowered, let's put it that way, then it's also different. So while we're speaking, there's been a couple of weeks ago here in Tbilisi, in the capital of Georgia, actually the church and the Georgian governmental powers attacked actions of the young generation that were just, saying that LGBTQI rights need to exist, and many died in these attacks. So somehow what is taken as gender fluidity, because we see many people just being liberated from those structures that existed below. Not everything is that easy in different territories, and I'm sure that in some countries here that our director feel this is quite a strong issue, and probably this is why sometimes when people see your film they also see that element, but that's even better, because different viewpoints, broader discussion.
Sure, but I mean, my point of view was just to tell a modern story of what's going on nowadays in our lives, and well, there is gay people, there is not gay people. I mean, it's just, yeah.
It's wonderful, and you've been awarded in this, I think you've been in this virtual festivaling cycle, right, with your film a lot somehow, that we all ended up together, and it's good that this so much warmth and so much care for the character is really seen through the film that you have in this program. I think we've got a message from Ninja who had to go. And for the moment, the last but not least, someone who has not yet spoken is Robin from Denmark, who's here with the documentary From the Wild Sea. And I wanted to somehow wrap with you, Robin, we're towards the end, because it's not about cultural boundary only and personal vision and so on. I think your film brings different urgency, ringing bells, and that is about sustainability, climate change, the rights of animals. You'll tell better what your film is about. And I think that it's an urgent call for the shared responsibility that we need to take everywhere, despite our origins and despite our citizenships and so on. And thank you very much for being so great on showing the perspective of animals in your film. Is just tremendous. It's powerful, it's alarming, and I hope that many people will see the film and look at things from a different viewpoint. So what's coming from the wild sea, and how did you cross this story? How did you account for this documentary chronicle, I mean?
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I think one of the things that was important to me, because the film actually, first I should say that it follows the process of rescuing marine animals, but it's not so much a film from this usual perspective that we're used to seeing, of a film from the animals' perspective, actually, as they are experiencing these rescue procedures. So you can say that it's a film about wildlife rescue, but I think even more so, it's a film that wants to just look at the world as a whole from a different perspective. And it's a huge invitation really to step into the world of someone else. And in this case, this world would be the world as it would be seen from a whale's perspective, or a seal's perspective, or a bird's perspective. So it's a film that really plays on these different gazes, in a sense, and challenges this very human gaze. We've been talking about the male gaze, but there's also a human gaze on the world. We certainly see everything very much from our own perspective. And it's just so difficult to step out of that and kind of shake up your own world a little bit and try to see things differently. So that's very much what it's about. It's really a film on our coexistence with every other species in the world, just as much as it is a film about climate change. Because what we're seeing in the film is that those marine animals are really going through some terrible challenges nowadays with oil spills and climate change-induced storms, and dolphins getting caught in fishing nets, all kinds of problems that are largely man-made. So there is definitely this climate change perspective, and this human impact on the environment. It's a very strong issue in the film, you can say.
Absolutely, and I think that somehow naturally Evie and yourself been talking about this human perspective, the wish of a human being without branding or placing someone in a special group, and you are talking about the perspective is just so literally unique, looking at things from the perspective of animals. And I think to some extent, this 1 hour and a half has been also anticipated in order to collect your visions, to see how from where did you start navigating in the stories that you are bringing to the program, and what your own take is on your final films. And I think we did probably achieve one thing only thanks to you, all of you selected for this program, is that you are all so diverse, you are so different, you have such a different takes and visions and opinions that the only decision an audience could take is to just make a selection, check when are your films playing, in which festivals they can catch them, if not in this reality, and just go out and learn about the beautiful stories that you are creating. There is one more person who would be here. That's Tuija from Finland. She is presenting a film called How to Kill a Cloud, but by the time we are speaking, her film is premiering in Locarno. And I think I would just use it as a chance to say that cinema is alive. We are here on Zoom, but there have been a lot of premieres from summer onwards that are happening in person, that are physical, that people sometimes will probably have a crazy look after a film or a tear in the eyes, but basically the human celebration in cinema is back slowly but surely. So that's the only reason why Tuya couldn't be here with us. And otherwise, we would very much like, from your network perspective, thank you all for taking your time and joining the project. And I would pass back to Sonia to say the final goodbye for now, probably.
Yeah, wow, thank you very much, Tamara, and thank you really all for sharing this with us. So that lets us see the films. I wish for some of what you have said, I knew it before I saw the films, but now I have to I have to rework some of the films in my mind. Thank you very much for participating. We are looking forward to promote you and your films continuously. And yeah, I hope we will see you soon again. And that's it for now. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you so much. It was nice to meet you. Good luck with your films.
All the best to you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.